You're on the Six Screens Telenetwork, earning the reputation of giving all the right ingredients, uninhibited, in exposing the hard, cold facts about the Watchtower Society. Disney.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome in once again to a rockin' awesome night here at the Six Screens. So glad that you could be with us tonight. And on our on these colder nights, it's starting to get colder up here in New England, and of course we got the clocks going back. So we are expecting a big crowd tonight. So by all means, if you have the opportunity, which I'm going to give you the opportunity tonight to call into Anne Marie's program and tell you a Watchtower story. I'll put the telephone number up so you'll be able to see it if you're watching this on YouTube and Facebook. So anyways, my name's Rick Farron. I'm here at the control panel in Massachusetts, and I want to bring our good friend, former Jehovah's Witness, Anne Marie in from California. Hello, Anne Marie.
Hello, my brother Rick. How are you this Six Screen Saturday?
Well, I have to tell you all the time, I'm doing good today, Anne Marie. It was a beautiful fall day up here in New England, nice crisp to the air, and moving in the right direction. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think we're going to get a good crowd tonight. I can just feel it. Sometimes I can feel it. After doing the program for 20 years, I get a certain feel for things. And the reason why I say that is when it starts getting colder, it seems like we do get more people coming in. People aren't going out as much. And also with the clocks, as we mentioned, going back, that's going to create more people coming in. Nobody wants to go out when the clocks go back. You lose an hour of sleep. So, yeah. Or do you make it? Do you gain an hour of sleep? Let's see if they go back. I guess you lose an hour of sleep. Am I correct with that? Sometimes I get confused. But anyways, it's clock turn back night. Spring ahead, fall back. So, Anne Marie, what's on your mind tonight?
Oh, same thing that was on my mind last show 2 weeks ago. I wanted to continue Watchtower stories that needed to be told, and I'm hoping that our listeners will call in with their experiences, their stories.
Well, I mean, everyone has a Watchtower story, Anne Marie. I can't believe, even if a person was only a Jehovah's Witness for 6 months, they have a story to tell. I remember the girl Courtney that came on here. She just went to the meeting for the very first time. And basically, she was read the Riot Act. You know, she was a poor girl. She didn't have a lot of money to buy clothes. So she wore big boots and a slit in her skirt. And of course, the sisters cornered her in the bathroom. You heard the story last week on here. We mentioned it. But the very first night she went to a Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall meeting, she really got the hatchet. And I mean, so she had a story to tell. So if you've been associated with the Jehovah's Witnesses for even just a short period of time, friends, you have a story to tell. Don't you think so, Anne Marie?
I do indeed, and that's what I'm hoping for, to hear Watchtower stories. I have several of my own, but that's just to take up space time, airtime. I want to hear other people's stories, and I want to hear also your stories. You were not able to share any of your stories on the last show, so I'm hoping you'll be able to share some of those, Rick.
Oh, yeah, no, I'll pop in and give some stories. Yeah, absolutely.
Especially that one when your young son was interested in a young sister in the congregation, and you got the Riot Act about them spending time together, and you came up with a solution, and that got shot down too, and that's one. So I know there are more, my brother.
Oh, yeah, well, I forgot about that one. I'll tell that one. I had another one in mind, but I'll tell that one, and we'll see what happens. Well, I'll let the audience go first. But if they don't speak up after you announce the program and what have you, I'll come in, tell that story, and maybe we'll get others to speak up after me,
That sounds like a great idea. May I ask how my beautiful sister Susan is doing?
Well, Susan's doing really good, really good. I'm very happy. She's moving forward. Let me put it this way to you. I can really see remarkable changes in her. She is getting so much better. She's stronger. She's going to be Miss America again, I'll tell you.
She is so amazing. I have so much love and respect and admiration for your beautiful wife.
I just wanted to speak up and say hello and thank you for inquiring about me, Anne Marie. I want to tell people I really enjoy your show because people get to just come on and speak from their heart when they're in the Watchtower. And people really need to hear that. And don't think your story's not important. It is. Because sometimes a person thinks, well, that's just me, that didn't really happen. But when you find out that those feelings or things happen to someone else, it just helps you get through.
You're so right, my sister. And, sometimes people think, well, it's not an amazing story or it's not that bad or whatever. No, it was the day-to-day struggle and stress, and we need to talk about it. We need to hear it, and then others can say, I understand. That happened to me too, because we felt like we were struggling alone, that our trials and tribulations were just ours alone, like just how you were treated. So maybe if you can come on and share some of your experiences, because you were treated not well at all, and you were an upstanding sister.
Well, one thing I do know, Anne Marie, is you helped me through one of the most difficult periods of time in my life. And I want people to know that you are just a very kind and giving person. And it's talking about the problem starts to heal the problem. If you won't talk about it, it's never going to heal. You've got to start somewhere. And you're an excellent person to talk to because you're so kind and loving.
You are so precious, Susan. You are just the most precious person. My goodness. Angel walking. I see that halo.
Oh, my.
So I wanted to take the time to introduce the show. Today is Saturday, November 2nd, 2024. I wish I could go back in time and tell all those brothers and sisters who were saying, Armageddon's coming any day. You don't have time to go to school. You don't have time for this. You don't have time for that. I wish I could go back and say, do you know that we're still going to be living the same BS in 2024? They would have looked at me like I had lost my mind. Huh, Susan? So today is the first show of the weekend. We have tomorrow, Sunday, Six Screen Sunday. And so today is Saturday again, November 2nd, 2024. The show is touched by the tentacles of the Watchtower. And that includes every which way that we were touched by the tentacles of the Watchtower. All of us were touched by the tentacles of the Watchtower in one way or another, and usually in several ways. I want to welcome everyone today to our show. All of our Six Screens family today. We're listening live. They can speak up at any time. Please feel free to use whatever name you want. This is a safe place. You don't have to worry about, oh my God, who's listening. This is a safe place. You can mention where you're from or where you're calling from. That would be great. Also, I would like to specifically, as I always do, like to welcome in the PIMQs who may be listening, those who are physically in the Watchtower, faithful to the Watchtower, but mentally they're questioning. They're disturbed by things they heard, they know, they've read, but they can't talk about it to anybody because if they do, they will be identified as an apostate and probably reported to the elders. I want to specifically also welcome the chemos, those who are physically in the Watchtower, but mentally they are out. Their mind is clear and free from the indoctrination, the programming that the Watchtower uses to control their members, and they have to sit there and see with open eyes the evil and the lies and the twisting of truth and the twisting of scriptures, and listen to their sick propaganda as they control the peonies. The peonies are the ones that are physically in the Watchtower, and they are mentally in their programming, believing anything and everything the Watchtower tells them to believe. If the Watchtower tells them the sky is orange, they have to believe it, or they're an apostate. If the Watchtower says Armageddon's coming after lunch tomorrow, they have to believe it, or else they're apostates. So I want to welcome everyone in. We can talk about anything. But the theme for this show today, we are continuing the theme from last show 2 weeks ago, Watchtower stories that need to be told. And I'm hoping that all of you listening will think of a story, an incident, an experience that you went through, your child went through, your husband, your wife went through, your friend went through, whatever it is. This is the show to tell your story. Would anybody like to pop in and just start talking? Remember, this show is for you, my brothers and sisters. This show is for you. Star 6, if anyone wants to speak up.
Yeah, good evening, Anne Marie.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Okay, before I get on with everything and so forth here, I got a hold of Jay tonight. I talked to him, and he's doing okay, and he's holding his own here. He's in an upbeat mood. I reminded him that the program was going to be tonight. He says he's going to try to get into it. So we had a brief chat, and then he had to go and so forth. So, but starting out tonight and so forth, I just gonna make a brief comment over here. You know, when a person, like I mentioned before, and I'll reiterate it again, when a person finds religion and practices religion and so forth and everything like that, it should be a positive experience. A person should be able to make improvements, and it should help somebody. It should help you mentally and physically and everything. You know, your whole outlook on life should be changing and so forth. But that's not the case in Watchtower society. Not only the people that were that considered themselves members and so forth, but even the people that did studies with them and so forth. Found that it all ended up, you know, in a big shipwreck. In other words, it's just like myself and so forth. I've just told my side of the story in synopsis form, in which I'm going to do right now. I'm not going to get into a lot of details. I studied with them and so forth. I was heavily involved with them, although I never became a member because their church was a long ways away. And so I never got to attend one of their churches, but they used to come to my place, and it was kind of a stomping ground. And I was friendly with them and so forth, and we studied quite a bit. They only studied the one book with me. That was the truth book the blue one, but after that was done, they always stopped by and we'd discuss issues on the various different topics, and we'd study the various different topics in the Bible and so forth. But it started out on a positive effect in the beginning and so forth. But then towards the last, after years went by, it turned out to be quite negative. My life did not improve. My outlook on religion did not improve. As a matter of fact, I got less and less interested in religion as time went on. I got less and less interested in the Watchtower Society. And pretty soon, the time came when I hardly ever saw him. But then there was a climax where they messed over my friend of mine, and I told them that after that they were not welcome at my place anymore. So yeah, every experience we got is a negative experience. I think we have yet to find a total and absolute positive experience that called in our program, at least. I know there's a bunch of people out there that feel that the Watchtower is everything, the best thing since sliced bread, but that's just their opinion, and they don't call up and they don't describe anything, at least not on this program. I've never heard a time yet that it was a positive experience. So we hope now that hit *6, we hope to get some callers in here and share your experience. Positive, negative, I don't care what, but it's probably not going to be positive. So hopefully we'll get some more calls in here.
Well, thank you, Ken, for that comment.
Yeah.
You care too.
You're welcome, and we'll keep listening. And
Thank you, Ken.
yeah, you're welcome.
Do you care to explain what upset you on how the witnesses treated your friend that caused you to say you didn't want to have anything more to do with them? Do you care to share that?
Okay, I'll share a little brief synopsis on that. That, of course, like mine, is a long story for another time. But yeah, he was involved with the Watchtower Society, just briefly, and we met, and he actually got real excited there for a minute. He's when I first met him and all that, he saw some of the books that they left me and all that, wanted to know if I was one of the witnesses. I says, no. I says, they come here and I'm friendly with them, but no, I'm not a member. And so then he started telling me his story, and he wanted to talk to them and so forth, and he wanted to appoint me as a personal representative to go down with him. And then I really had the experience of my life with them and so forth. They were nothing but rude to me. They were nothing but rude to him. They wouldn't let me go in and talk with him. He went and he went and talked to them first, and then they come and talked to me. But they were rude to me also. And after they were rude, I told them point blank. I says, there was a time, I said, that you were welcome at my place. I said, but you're not welcome there anymore. And they said, well, can we come and see your mother and dad? I said, well, ask them. I said, I'm just speaking for myself. So yeah, they messed him over and all that, and they started leaning on him. And they claimed that he was a member and they had jurisdiction, over him, and so forth, and they had a right to put him out and everything like that. But they didn't have a bit of proof whatsoever that he was a member. And I went on the internet and so forth and tried to do some investigative research on, the stuff that they give you for membership. And none of that, he recognized none of that stuff whatsoever except the blood card. He says they give him a blood card, which he didn't understand either, And, well, they give me a blood card too, so that's the only thing that we ever got from him. No membership, no identification credentials whatsoever. So they're really crafty and conniving in their egregious ways by what they do and everything.
Well, that is so true. They actually expect you to bleed to death if you got in an accident or had to have an emergency operation, didn't they? And your friend too.
I never could truly understand that blood issue, but when they talked to me about the blood issue, there was There was their belief that you couldn't take any blood and so forth, but there was also other issues connected with that, like the other dangers of accepting a blood transfusion, which they had valid points to that. But the thing that was wrong about it is their religious doctrine says that we're not allowed to take blood transfusions because of some scriptures that were written in a time that blood transfusions were not even known about and so forth. But there is no such prohibitions in the Christianity's Bible and so forth. That there's a prohibition against eating it for food, which was given only to the ancient Hebrews or Israelites, whatever way you want to put it. But yeah, their prohibition on that is wrong. And truthfully, they really don't have any jurisdiction on an issue like that because they're not medical experts. That should be the choice that you make between you and your doctor, not Watchtower Society individuals who know nothing about medicine for the most part.
So true.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, are you wanting to add anything, Ken?
No, if we we'd like to get some other callers in if we can and so forth. So hit *6 and give your experience. Talk to us here on Six Screens Network. I'd sure appreciate hearing from you. And we all would. Yes, caller, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I've called before. My name's Shannon, and I thought of this experience. There was an earlier, I guess, episode where Sister Anne Marie was talking about unchristian conduct, and unfortunately, I missed that episode. But I did think of one example of this that, to me, was a particularly egregious example of the elders looking the other way when something happened. This happened to a family. There were two families in our hall. Well, sorry, one of them was in our hall. It was a black family, and I was friends with the daughter. And the daughter had two brothers, and the eldest brother fell in love with the white sister from another hall, and her family were Jehovah's Witnesses too. And anyway, they started dating, and what the girl's family started doing was calling up my friend's family and making death threats against them because her brother was dating the daughter, and they would just call at random, hours of the night and tell them they were going to shoot them. They had guns and they were going to shoot them. So anyway, I asked the daughter, my friend, like I said, well, have you told the elders about this? And she said, yes. But here's the bad thing. The elders did nothing. They said nothing. They did not do anything about it. So this family was left on their own to cope with these threats. And to make a long story short, nothing happened. And they did wind up getting married anyway. But I think it was kind of because of the circumstances, it was kind of a stressful beginning to their marriage, and they had a kid. And I don't know what happened to them. I lost track because I left afterwards myself. But I was just thinking about how irresponsible that was on the part of the elders, and I mean just leaving this family and just leaving them to stand for themselves basically. And this was a long time ago. It wasn't like now, where you can maybe sue or whatever, because somebody's making a death threat against you. And so anyway, like I said, I don't know what has happened to this family, but I hope they're safe, and I hope that the couple, I hope they are still together and that they're leading happier lives.
Are you there, Emery? I'm not sure what happened to Anne Marie, but we'll get around here shortly. I don't know if her phone went out or what happened, but this is Rick Farron here in Massachusetts, and you're hearing people telling the Watchtower stories. So we'll get Anne Marie.
Hey, Rick.
Yes. Is this Pixie?
It is.
Yes.
I wanted to remind everyone on the East Coast that fall back on the time for daylight savings time.
Yeah, thank you, Pixie. In fact, I kind of mentioned that at the beginning of the show, but I get a little mixed up on that. So when the clocks go back, that means we gain an hour, right? I mean, we
lose an hour.
Oh, we lose an hour, so we'll be more tired.
Bring forward, fall back. So we'll lose an hour. So go to bed nice and early to make up for it.
Okay, yeah, I get a little confused all the time when that comes out, but it's going to happen tonight. What time's it going to happen, Pixie?
It's supposed to be Sunday that we're really supposed to do it, but you can set the kitchen clock whenever you want to. You know, sometimes I'm early if I don't have anywhere to go on Sunday. It's nice not having to go somewhere on Thursday and Sunday now.
Oh, it's amazing, Pixie, to be able to be free, to be able to, even though we went to the meetings on Sunday, it was a drag all the time, but on Saturday night, you had to prepare for it. You had to study a Watchtower, and it was a real hassle. It was like having another job, Pixie.
It was. I wanted to mention, I hope Anne Marie can get back to her broadcast there. I wanted to mention the scripture on the blood card. Someone did a video on it. It has nothing to do with medical advice, and it has nothing to do with doctrinal advice. It's basically calling a person a fool. So if you know somebody that still has the blood card, look up that one scripture. It has nothing to do with the legal document that the person signed.
Yeah. Now, did you? Well, I'm sure you signed your blood card. You had to do it in front of some witnesses. Remember that?
Right, but look up the scripture, and the scripture's basically calling you a fool for doing it.
Well, I'll tell
I
you
don't
what.
have one on me to tell you what the scripture is, but someone did a video on it, and it shocked even me, because most people signed that card without even reading it or reading the scriptural reference, which has nothing to do with the medical care of Old Testament. It has nothing to do, Deuteronomy says choose life. Of course, we're doing the opposite with that legal document. But if you know somebody that still has one, see how that scripture doesn't have anything to do with anything.
Well, Pixie, I often think of that screwy blood card and how we all had to, go to a person, have them witness it, and I'm going to sign your card, you sign mine. What a terrible thing. What a terrible position one was in to have to really be a witness to one wanting to die. I mean, now that I think about it, that's what we were. We were going to be a witness to one who basically would die for refusing a blood transfusion. How sick is that? Yes.
Right. And you can go to an attorney and have your own medical care for your husband and wife and things like this. You can have your own paperwork made up for very little money. And the hospital, you can talk to them, make sure you're not on the hospital database as a witness. Even if you are a religious person, let's say you're a Baptist, you can tell them at the hospital you appreciate a chaplain, but you don't have any religion, because you don't want them to think you're a witness and deny you anything. The nurses and doctors will work with you.
Well, can you imagine being a top official, even an elder? Your conscience, my conscience would bother me so much if I got out and I was some chief of governing body member, some official of the Watchtower, and you actually...
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
You're on mute. Okay,
Anne Marie.
Emily.
Still there?
Yeah, we're still here with you.
Can anybody just say hello? Yeah. I am very, very sorry. I was talking and I was on mute.
That's okay, Anne Marie. I took over for you. That's okay.
We both very happy in the congregation. There was a young couple that was. Go ahead.
I was saying we had, I took it over for you. Well, Pixie was on the line with us. So let Pixie finish up, then come on back in, Anne-Marie, okay?
I apologize.
No
Please
problem.
go ahead, Pixie. Thank you, Rick.
Well, I went through it with my mom, and I insisted on meeting with the anesthesiologist because it was like this gangster squad over her tiny body, and she lived another 5 years. So, you know, they were pushing papers in my face, and I just went to the nurse's station and said I must meet with the anesthesiologist of the surgical team before she goes in, and what can I do? These so-called elders are around her bed, and when I got back, the nurse had shooed them away, and she lived another 5 years.
It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. And, you know, I remember, too, my first wife, when she had a brain hemorrhage. And so she was rushed off to the hospital down in Florida. And, you know, then, of course, the presiding overseer came up. But I got the feeling that he really wasn't there to give me support for my wife, who was basically told she was going to die. But, you know, I'm sure he was there to making little suggestions about the fact that, you know, it's a shame this happened and these things happen, Rick. But they spy on you. They want to make sure that you're not going to take blood. These people.
These were 5 large men in their Kingdom Hall suits. It was like a gangster squad.
It's absolutely nutty. That would bother my conscience so much today if I ever had to be put in a position like that, being on the liaison committee or being in a hospital and actually, you know, encouraging the person not to take a blood transfusion. How could you live with yourself?
It was terrible, and we know that they wanted her house, and she cussed them out and, you know, told them they were workers of iniquity. And that was a brilliant, beautiful day for me and her. And that I'm still sitting in the house today. So they want the house of the older people. They don't care if you live or die. The saddest story are these pregnant sisters that leave the husband, sometimes with the infant dying and sometimes with the infant with no parent. It's become a new cause célèbre for me when I realized that the risk now is, I read some medical material, the risk to get the blood transfusion is less than the risk to not get it.
Well, you were just talking about the witnesses trying to take over the homes and the property. We're going to be talking about that on the news tonight when that comes up. There was a big article this week. I'm going to read it to you guys tonight. It was in the New York Times, and how older people are being scammed, not only by, you know, businesses and scamming people all over the place, but also by religion, including the Watchtower. So we're going to be talking about that tonight.
I'm glad they mentioned that. Well, let's get back to Anne-Marie's show. And spring forward and fall back, so set your clocks, folks.
Thank you for that reminder. I must need it. Pixie, thank you so much for sharing, you know, that experience. I was saying when I was muted, and I apologize to all of you. Rick, thank you so much for covering. There was a very young, sweet couple in another congregation that I heard of. Both families, the husband's family was a very kind, loving, happy Jehovah's Witness family, and the young wife had also come from a very happy Jehovah's Witness family. So they had a happy marriage. Everybody was happy. And they had a little girl, and that little girl was just the light of their life. And when she was 2, something happened. I don't know if she needed emergency surgery or it was a car accident. I don't know, but she needed emergency surgery, and it definitely required that she have a blood transfusion. And both the dedicated wife and husband said that we can't okay the blood transfusion because they absolutely believed everything Watchtower had taught. And Watchtower had basically taught, and as far as I know they still do, that if you have a blood transfusion, you are directly going against Jehovah's commandment not to take blood. So they both said, we just can't approve a blood transfusion, and the poor little thing bled to death. Well, after the child had died, the mother especially was just so beside herself, so distraught, crying. She missed her beautiful little girl, who was such a happy little thing. And of course, the brother was suffering too, but he was trying to be strong for his wife. And the brothers and sisters initially, comforted her. How are you? We're so sorry. Hugging her, trying to give her words of encouragement. She'll just wake up in the new system and it'll be a happy reunion. All the things that they could think of to be encouraging. But she was just so distraught. I mean, you have to see the crib, you have to see her toys, you have to see her cute little clothes, and she just couldn't get past it. And as time went on, the brothers and sisters began to ignore her, and she just cried more and more, and she started voicing, did I do the wrong thing? Did Jehovah really want my daughter to die? Did I do the right thing? I miss her so much. I can't stand this. And, more and more. Now they're really avoiding her. And it was sad because the elders several times pulled the husband aside and said, you need to get your wife under control. She's making Jehovah's organization look bad. And, like the man wasn't under enough stress. Well, by and by, the poor girl's depression grew worse, and she cried more and more, and she became so depressed and so distraught that the congregation elders disfellowshipped her for causing divisions and for making Jehovah's organization look bad. And of course, that just increased her depression because now no one would talk to her, and she ended up committing suicide. And this is just, it's just so wrong. And there are so many stories just on the blood issue alone that are devastating. When my little friend was 5 years old, she lived in the country, and she was riding her tricycle, and she happened to get hit by a truck, and they didn't know if she was going to live. And she was bleeding internally. And when she was in her hospital bed, her mother was at her side, and she grabbed her mother's hand, begging her mother, Mommy, please don't let them give me a blood transfusion because I want to see the paradise. This little child is 5 years old, and somehow she survived, but she was permanently damaged physically, crippled for the rest of her life. But it really blew my mind that this 5-year-old was more scared of not being in the paradise than bleeding to death. 5 years old. This organization is so corrupt. In my mind, I don't care if a religion teaches this, that, or the other, but to make it mandatory that every member obey what they teach, that's what bothers me the most, that you are not allowed to make your own mind up according to your own conscience. Would anybody like to hit *6 and share an experience or a story?
Can I speak up? Can you hear me?
Well, I don't know. Can you? Of course you can.
You can hear me. Okay, I'm Jane Dahl. I'm XJW Jane Dahl. I'm so glad you're talking about that because you know how the governing body says that was Acts chapter 15. It's the governing body that came up with that decision. Acts chapter 15. That's where they come with that decision about blood. In that chapter, and I'm going to read it right from the New World Translation, chapter 15 and verse 5, it says, Yet some of those of the sect of the Pharisees that had believed rose up from their seats and said, It is necessary to circumcise them and to charge them to observe the law of Moses. A sect of the Pharisees was the governing body. They say that was the governing body in chapter 15 that came up with that decision that about blood. Acts chapter 15, verse 29, I think it is. Keep abstaining from those sacrificed to idols, those things sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from strangled and from fornication. If you carefully keep these things, from these things you will prosper, good health to you. Chapter 15, the Watchtower always says that the governing body is the one that came up with that decision. And it says the sect of the Pharisees, they were believers. It says, yet some of those of the sect of the Pharisees that had believed rose up from their seats and said, it is necessary to circumcise them and to charge them to observe the law of Moses. How many people as witnesses realize that scriptures in there in Acts chapter 15? A sect of the Pharisees were the governing body, were in the governing body.
Hearing you, and I remember reading when they were talking about when the Gentile Christians were mixed up with the Jewish Christians. Now the Jewish people always abstain from blood because of the law that was given to Noah. And I remembered having to think about this, that Noah was given the law on blood, and it seemed to me that it was more about respect. You can eat any part of the body of the animal you kill, but you must drain the blood on the ground because the blood is sacred, because the life is in the blood. It was life that was sacred. It was about eating blood, and there are many cultures still that actually eat blood, drink blood, and so on. And I never really realized what that meant about respect for blood until I was sitting at the dinner table with my grandmother-in-law, who is from Nicaragua, and she had a gravy belt full of blood, and she was ladling the blood over her rice. And I almost just got sick. And she was eating it. And I said, how can you eat that? And she said, you should try it. It's good. And that's when it clicked. Eating blood like it's just any other food, like it's gravy, is what the blood law was all about. It is not treating the blood that contains the life which belongs to Jehovah God. It's the life that's sacred. So now down through the years, we come up with blood transfusions, which is not about eating blood. It's about restoring a person who needs blood, the blood that they need, because blood has many functions. We cannot live without blood. And having a blood transfusion is like having a heart transplant or a liver transplant or a kidney transplant and so on. To use blood that God created, that our bodies need for the very function for which it was created, in my mind, in no way shows disrespect to God, because God said the blood is sacred because the life is in the blood. So basically, the Watchtower was telling their members that the blood is more important than your life, which is not what God ever said. So that, to me, that one issue, the blood issue, just that one thing shows how twisted and ugly and against God that Watchtower is. That is absolutely horrendous, that we were not allowed to make a decision. I almost bled to death having my first baby. It took hours for the doctor to finally get the bleeding under control, because I had the blood card and the papers were already signed by my mother that under no circumstances could I have a blood transfusion. And I remember, if I had bled much more, I would have died. And it's a shame. That's a shame. 15-year-old having to bleed to death after giving birth. It's just terrible. It's terrible.
Well,
anyone like to talk? Go ahead, sure.
Yeah. Okay, I'm so glad you're talking about this, because abortion's because of the election. They talk about abortion all the time. This Awake, 1993. It's May 22nd. About abortion. It says the title of the article is "The Life, a Gift to be Cherished," and I'm going to quote it right from the article. It says, "At the time of delivery, the parents must decide between the life of the mother and the life of the child." Now, my daughter was pregnant with twins in 2009. and they were about 8 weeks early, and she has this problem with platelets since she was a teenager, and she almost died from that. It's kind of like leukemia. She had they call it ITP for short, and I forget, it's a long name. But anyway, she almost died from that when she was not a teenager. She was in her early 20s. Anyway, it's like leukemia, and either you're going to get over it in 2 years, or it's going to kill you, one or the other. And she was fortunate; she had the type that it was like 2 years. It comes from like strep throat, or she got hers from mononucleosis. It went into that. So then, anyway, when she was pregnant with her twins, she was 29. And they were about 7 to 8 weeks early. And all of a sudden, well, she had gained 9 pounds, I think like 9 pounds in 1 week. And she was so swollen. And my husband and I were visiting her. And we said, you got to go to the hospital. You got to go to the doctor. And she didn't want to go because her appointment was the next day. So then we get a phone call the next day from my daughter, who, she's a witness. Anyway, she says, you've got to come to the hospital because it's about 45 minutes away. She said, because they want to operate on, her sister, my daughter, because they got to take the babies because her platelets are dropping so fast. So in the morning, her platelets went from, you have to have platelets at least about 250,000. I don't know what that is, what that means, but if it drops below that, you don't clot. So anyway, platelets are one of the things Watchtower says you can't take. And they had to take the babies right away because her platelets had gone from about 72,000 to under 50,000. So they had to take the babies right away because of this condition that she was in. So my other daughter called, and she said, you got to come to the hospital because they want to give her a blood transfusion. All the doctors are around her, my son-in-law, and the doctors around her, and they said, we got to take the babies because your platelets are so low, you're going to bleed to death. And so you need a blood transfusion. So we called New York. New York doesn't pick up the phone. They only pick up the phone between, I think, like 8 and 12, and then maybe 1 to 5 or something like that. Nobody picked up the phone from New York. And the liaison committee didn't come. They weren't available. So some brothers came from the congregation there, and all they did was read what the Watchtower said in the Kingdom Ministry. Well, platelets is one of the things you can't take. You can take other fractions, but you can't take platelets, or I think there's 4 things he said. So platelets is what she needed. So then, anyway, I didn't know the Bible that well, and I did. After this happened, I researched it, and they go, it's like the Noahide law, like what you were saying. Basically, it's not going by the Mosaic law, because if they caught an animal, they could eat it. If they found an animal, they could eat it, but they were unclean till night or something like that. So they can get out of the Mosaic law, but it's the Noahide law, like you said, is basically what they're going by. So then anyway, this Awake magazine, it says here, and this is important, it says, it's from the May 22nd, 1993. Life is a gift to be cherished. At the time of delivery, and it's got that in quotes, the parents must decide between the life of the mother and the life of the child. Now, when you're talking about delivery, witnesses have the right to abort that baby, to kill that baby in that article at the time of delivery. Because my daughter, when they had to do a cesarean on her, and I told her after we thought of, the longest time, I said I'd take platelets because she was going to die. They were under 6 pounds, both of them. What are you going to do if she dies? Okay, so after the longest time, we couldn't get a hold of New York. I mean, witnesses think all they have to do is put blood expanders in somebody's body. That's what they think. All they got to do is put blood, it's like salt water. And they think they're going to survive. No, blood takes oxygen. It carries oxygen. You can't expand the blood with water and salt. You need oxygen. It has to have oxygen, which means it's got to be blood. It carries oxygen, and that's what they think. Until they're put in that situation, like what happened with my daughter, you don't think about it. Now it's too late. All of a sudden, it happens so quick like that, and you have to make a split decision like that, just like that. My husband said later, he's a witness, and he said later he wished she would have died before taking blood. That's what he wished. I mean, that's what he said, that he wished she would have died first. Okay, so this Awake magazine is saying that you can abort, you can kill that baby at the time of delivery. What witnesses think that way? Now, if so, in other words, what they could have done was they could have put something inside of my daughter and kill those babies, cut them up into pieces, and drag them out of her body rather than cut her open without the blood transfusion. This is what witnesses have to go through now. I don't know what witness woman wants to even have a baby nowadays because of the abortion. But they'll go, no, nobody's going to abort a baby at 9 months. Watchtower is saying in this article here, you can abort a baby at 9 months to save the life of the mother. In other words, she cannot take a blood transfusion. If she takes a blood transfusion, they're breaking the law of the Watchtower Society. So in other words, if she wants to take a blood transfusion, she's breaking their law. So they're saying the parents have to decide if they're going to kill the baby or save the mother. It's a big thing, and I don't think any witnesses even think about that. They don't think about that.
Yeah. You know what really blew me away is the thought that, okay, if it's wrong to take a blood transfusion because the blood belonged to somebody else, why did Watchtower ban the idea of storing your own blood? That made no sense to me, to have a blood transfusion which would infuse into your body your own blood. What was the big deal against that? They were so tyrannical. Go ahead.
If you can take fractions, then that means somebody donated it. It didn't go poured out on the ground. It's okay to take fractions. What they say you can take part of it. What part they say that you can take.
Do you mind repeating the date of that Awake?
Yes,
so that's
the Awake 1993, and it's about abortion. It's the May 22nd, and it's called Life, a Gift to be Cherished. And I wrote it down. At the time of delivery, the parents must decide between the life of the mother and the life of the child. So they have permission to kill a baby at the time of delivery to save her life. In other words, if they got to cut her open and she needs a blood transfusion, no, kill the baby, go inside of the baby, kill the baby, cut it up into pieces, drag it out. It sounds so barbaric, but that's a decision witnesses have to make. It's either her life or the baby's life. So they don't take blood.
So this is the May 22nd, 1993 Awake.
It's about abortion.
I'm hoping that there will be listeners who will go on jwfacts.com, FACTS, jwfacts.com, put in the search bar, May 22nd, 1993 Awake, so that they can look for this article and see it for themselves. And I'm so glad, Jane Doe, that you brought
you
this
can go
up.
on jw.org and get it. You go on to the library and get it. Type in the title,
right.
Life, a Gift to be Cherished. It takes you right to that article on jw.org on the library.
Well, that's great. Is there anything you would like to add to that, Jane Doe?
No, thanks for letting me rant. I appreciate it.
You're not ranting at all, my dear, not at all. You're telling a story about Watchtower that needed to be told, because these stories will be in the archives and there will be future listeners to your stories. Would anybody else like to chime in? *6, share your thoughts.
Anne-Marie, hi, Anne-Marie.
Hi, who's it?
Yeah, hello.
Hello. Who's it? What's your name?
It's Tim here, but I thought I heard Eric as well.
What's your name again?
It's Tim here. I thought I heard Eric as well. But I wasn't Eric, that was comment. Oh, sorry, Stephen. No, you go ahead. I've only got a brief comment. Yeah, I'll be quick anyway. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Anne-Marie. That was an interesting story, an article there by Jane Doe.
Are you calling from Australia? Are you calling from Australia?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, I am, man. Yeah, it's Sunday morning here. I just wanted to add, like, everyone has heard of most of the arguments about blood and the sanctity of life and all that. I just wanted to add a different perspective that I heard. I don't know the name of the YouTube channel, but his name's Jack. It's just another thing that can be used in the argument of it. He was saying, like, about the scripture, like, from the angle of medical context with blood transfusions. He was saying, well, what about the scripture in the Old Testament that talks about inappropriate touching of a woman and how a guy would be, basically that's a rape. But in the modern context, you've got gynecologists, you've got the medical, they're not raping women. So again, if that's modern day life as compared to old day life, it's the same with the blood thing. These medical things didn't exist in the time of the Bible, as we all know. So that's always an interesting thing. But I was also going to just add a little experience that I remember from years ago, which goes to show what the witnesses, we all know that they think they're better than everyone else and they don't give a damn of people outside the religion. That there was a guy that used to go to our Kingdom Hall, and rarely. He used to go to the memorials and a couple other times, but he was married to a woman that was a witness, and he was witness by name. He just didn't attend much, but he wanted a blood card, so he obviously believed in it. But because he didn't attend much, the elders declined it. So it's like, in hindsight, that's a good thing, but it just goes to show the way they think, because in their mind, they're saving you by giving you that blood card. Yet because this guy doesn't attend meetings enough, he's not good enough to have a blood card, so who gives a damn about him and his life? That's really what they're showing. And it's, that mindset. People have probably come and seen those types of things before, like, why do they have to, why do you have to, follow all the witness protocol before you're accepted, but anyone else, that you can die for all they care. Anyway, thanks for letting me speak, and I'll keep listening. Thank you. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for calling in with that thought, a very important thought. Was there Eric waiting?
No, that was Stephen. I just had. First of all, how you doing, Anne-Marie? Good. I just had just two quick thoughts, just to piggyback off of Jane Doe and the gentleman that just finished speaking. I'll address the gentleman who's just finished speaking first. It's amazing to me how Watchtower picks and chooses what things are going to make issues out of from the scriptures.
Right.
And it's unfortunate. All of us that are listening to this program, Six Rings, we know that. The people that need to hear that, of course, the people that are not on this show, because it would be so obvious for us to show them. Watchtower picked. There's so many things in the scriptures that it says to do or not to do that Watchtower doesn't discuss, doesn't make a big point out of at all. And then they'll pick on things like the blood issue that we're talking about and decide that they're going to make that an issue. The second point, going back to something Jane Doe said, if these witnesses could just be shown, are you willing to die over a belief that's not even yours? There's nobody I know that's ever read the Bible, walked away from it, and thought, oh, yeah, it's very clear. You can't take a blood transfusion. It's right there in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 7. It's not in the Bible at all. It doesn't assert that at all. It says eat, just like what she mentioned. There are people from other cultures who eat blood. I used to work for a gentleman who was Slovak from Czechoslovakia. They ate blood. They ate blood sausage and blood pudding and the like. That's what that verse is talking. You go and read the context. You read about how they would eat animals that had been sacrificed to idols and it would be put in the marketplace. Some people would buy them. It didn't bother them. Other people said, no, I can't buy that if it's sacrificed. So, well, that's a conscious matter. But this is what it's talking about. It's literally talking about eating. It is not talking about a medical procedure 2,000 years in the future. That is not what it was talking about. And it's just so damn sad that people are still dying over this. I told you, Anne-Marie, I'm sure, a woman that I know personally, she went in to have a routine operation. In the process, the doctor nicked something, and by the time the middle of the week rolled around, she had bled out because of her quote unquote position on blood. So it's just a shame that people are dying over this nonsense. And with the way the Watchtower is constantly changing its policies and its procedures and changing its teachings, it's just amazing why somebody would stop and think, how do you know they're not going to change this next year, next month, the next Watchtower that comes out? Am I going to allow myself to die when this teaching could be changed tomorrow, just like they've been changing everything else? It's just so sad. It just really is.
It is. It's almost beyond criminal, and it's definitely horrendous, and it's stupid. And my beef is that Watchtower does not allow their members to make up their own mind according to their own conscience. You know, they'll pray to God and, you know, should I do this or do that? And they feel like, oh, God's law, I don't want to disobey God's law, when it was never God's law. The Watchtower government made it up. They just made it up.
Just amazing. They made it up and they just enforce it. And it's just, I mean, even like this 607 thing, which has nothing to do with blood, but they still in 2024 are saying that 607 was a year, and based upon that, that's how you get to 1914 and all the rest. And you won't find one single person on the planet who knows anything about ancient history that will tell you that 607 was the year. But Watchtower, and this is why I don't know. Sometimes I know Mr. Farron says we should be forgiving. I don't forgive Watchtower because they are. It's one thing if you're inept and you're just teaching something because you just didn't know any better. Well, once you learn better, then you're fully expected to do better. This organization knows that the things that they're teaching are wrong. They know that the things that they're teaching are hurting people, even to the point of death in the case of this blood transfusion, and yet they persist on doing it.
That is so true. Good point, Stephan. Would anybody like to comment on anything Stephan said, or Pixie, or Jane Doe, or
Hi, Anne-Marie.
Hi, who's this?
It's Eric. How you doing?
I was hoping you were calling in.
Every time you asked if I was there, I wasn't near the microphone to unmute it, so I'm like, I waited. How are you doing? You doing okay?
I'm good. How are you, my dear?
I'm doing pretty good. My spirits are good. I'm doing better. But I was going to comment on the blood fractions, the blood what Jane Doe was talking about, and I mean, I don't mean to bore the audience and the people who listen to me too about the same story, but I do have hemophilia, which makes me need blood fractions. And because I know about them and how it works, it is absolutely, there's no other word, it's absolutely retarded to take some blood and not whole blood. It's just, it is so stupid. It makes no sense. It's almost like, what could you compare it to? Like, you can have some poison, but not all poison. Like I don't know. I can't think of a metaphor on the spot. But these guys are crazy because if I was born in 81, so let's say I was born in 71 with this condition, 10 years prior, I'd be dead. I knew it would be a slow, painful, agonizing death. And for what? Because you know what happened, I think that these guys, the governing body members, and whoever controls the puppet strings, I think that they got so lost in telling people what to do that they actually are playing God, and they're going to be hurt and punished by it.
Oh, no doubt.
Jesus, big time. But they're playing God, and they got so caught up in it that that's just why they're doing stupid things. This is why nothing makes sense, because men are ruling the people. They're literally the God. Every time they say Jehovah, they mean themselves. And sorry, I got passionate with my voice. It's just a passionate subject when I talk about the blood issue. You know, I'm just going to say his name, Little Morgan Orleman. You know, he's not little anymore. He was 10 years old with leukemia, and the parents were going to let him die. He was one of my brother's best friends, and he was my friend too. He was just much younger than me. He's like 3 or 4 years younger than me, and it matters when you're, 15. But still, we were all close because his brother was close to my age, and we were all close. We played video games together, and it was we spent so much time with that kid. Into like, he was so sick, and he was gonna die, and the state took him from them and said, no, we're not. It was Rhode Island, and they said, we're not going to do it. And Rhode Island is it's rated, I think, number 5 or 10 in the United States, Rhode Island Hospital, and they did a good job, and he lived, and he had a sad fate, becoming an apostate, and his family shuns him, but he, I'm happy that the bad thing didn't happen, because that touches home. Now it's personal, what the governing body were doing. This was one of my brother's best friend and a good friend of mine. And to just let your child die, there's something wrong with the parents too. Where's the conscience, right? Anne-Marie and anyone listening, where's the parents' consciences to say, I don't care, I'm going to take care of my kid. I can't watch them suffer and die.
Yeah.
Sorry for the rant.
No, not at all. And that was not a rant, Eric. First of all, if I may comment, it is so heavily indoctrinated into the Jehovah's Witness mind, the PMEs, those who are physically in the Watchtower and mentally in the Watchtower. Their programming, they're fully in their Watchtower programming, and their programming tells them that Satan is trying to tempt them to disobey Jehovah. And if they obey Jehovah and their child dies, or their mother dies, or their wife or husband dies, they are in obedience to Jehovah, and their relative that they love so much that they allowed to die, they will be in the paradise. But if you disobey Jehovah's command against, blood transfusion, and we know that it's not Jehovah's command, but the inculcation, the indoctrination, the program tells them that you either obey Jehovah or you don't obey Jehovah. And I've heard of people that actually got the transfusion, survived, and then had to go through the committee hearings, and they want you to tell them that you're sorry for what you did. You disobeyed Jehovah's sacred law and blood, and they want to hear you say you're so sorry. I'm sorry, but I wouldn't say I'm sorry, Liz. So sometimes they get disfellowshipped.
Yeah, I know someone who got disfellowshipped. It was my buddy Dustin. I was the best man in his wedding, and his grandfather, like a long, long time ago, before I knew the family, it might have been 70s or 80s, and he needed a blood transfusion, and he had children and grandchildren, and he didn't want to die. He didn't want to leave them with nothing, because he was still working on leaving something for them, and he wasn't ready. And so he got the blood transfusion, and then it had to go through both, just like you said. He got disfellowshipped, and he never got reinstated. He still made some of the meetings and so he probably was physically out, mentally in, and that's a horrible place to be for the rest of your life and die disfellowshipped like that, Anne-Marie.
It truly is. This organization that proclaims that they alone are true Christians are the most unloving, dictatorial, tyrannical mind control cult. It's all about control, control, control. There's no love, no compassion. It breaks my heart. Eric, I know your condition. Are you willing to share what you have had to live with the painful blood disorder that you have?
Sure, if it helps the show out, I can talk a little bit about it. I wasn't going to bring it up because I just battle with this disease all the time. I'm talking to you in the hospital as we speak. I had an accident where I dropped a flashlight on my foot. It's one of those heavy duty ones that shares a battery with like, say a Sawzall, something heavy. It went bare skin, and that's all it takes for somebody with a bleeding disorder. And I usually don't get too many of these. But I think the last one was like 2 or 3 years ago. That was real bad. But I had some expired medication that I had rationed up for occasions like this, and it's not working. And I let it go for about 4 or 5 days till I was in so much agony that I will finally go. I don't have anybody because my wife is sick, so I couldn't drive. I'm not trying to complain. So I couldn't drive myself to the hospital, so I got an ambulance ride there because the hospital near me, they don't have my medication. And none of the hospitals do, even the ones like 12 minutes down the road don't have it. I have to go to Nashville, which is like 45 minutes from me. I just, my right foot, so it's like I couldn't really drive in traffic with a messed up foot. But they said I have a hematoma, which is a really bad bruise and bleeding, and I have... Debbie Moore's in the hospital too. I'm laughing. I don't know, because if you laugh, you cry. And she has something going on called cellulitis, I think. At least she told me that. And I hope I'm not giving too much personal information. But that's what I have on my foot too. It's a skin, like, what is it? A skin infection. It's just like, I'm like, we both got the same thing at the same time, hon. We gave it to each other. But it's been hard to manage, and I'll be honest, because of Jehovah's Witnesses and where they've left me. When I'm in the hospital alone and I don't have anybody and no one even a call, and don't get me wrong. Now that I'm making friends like JP that call me up and Debbie Moore and others, I just can't think of everyone on the spot. But it's just been I've gotten used to it, but it's hard. It's hard when they're like, "Oh, you need to come in for a procedure. Do you have anyone to take you?" I'm like, no, but I just sit there and I'm like, I don't. And that's what Jehovah's and this is just one sad story. Jehovah's Witnesses have done this to so many people because we couldn't be around worldly people, and when they shut us, they literally leave us in isolation for dead. It's like they strip you naked, take all your possessions. This is like a metaphor, and just throw you out on the dirt road, bloody and ready to die. But left for dead, literally. And that's how I feel about them. Like, how can my parents not care? Like, if I called them right now and said, "Hey, I'm in the hospital, just so you know," and it's no big deal. I'll probably be out by tomorrow. But still, what kind of morality do you have to not be able to pick up the phone because some man told you not to?
Oh, definitely. That's so not normal. I've known 2 separate people who have your blood disorder, and have been. Yes, I do, and it's a sad thing to see, and what they have to live with constantly, the pain, and any little bleeding is.
Do they have it severe? Do they have it severe? That's what I have to.
Yeah,
it's tough. Go ahead.
No, it's just that I got educated because these 2 people I knew told me what they went through, and any bleeding can be absolutely catastrophic. And to see their elbows locked up from so many episodes.
That's what I have. I lost my range of motion. I'm at like 60%, somewhere around there, 60-ish.
And you're always so kind and so loving, and you've been through so much. And
you know why, Marion? It's because it's because of. I call you Marianne. I'm sorry, dyslexia.
No worries.
And Marie. I forgot what I was going to say because I realized I messed up your name. What was the last thing that you said?
Well, I can't help but notice how friendly and
Oh.
kind you are, and you always listen
That's right.
and you validate. And you were there for a brother last show, told me he had called you and that you were a great comfort to him. I forgot his name, but I was.
You know why that is? It's because when I left Jehovah's Witnesses, I started to become a true Christian, and I honestly believe that. Not that I was a bad guy in the Witnesses, but I don't think I had my best qualities. I was also younger, but because we don't have self-growth in the organization unless you are you and me and everybody else listening and the part of the show, because we didn't fit in, did we?
No, I noticed a
And that's
lot.
a good thing.
I never ever felt that I could fit in. I always wondered what was wrong with me, that I wasn't like other Jehovah's Witnesses. Like I just couldn't be mean. I didn't gossip. I didn't. I'm a loving, kind person, and I just couldn't understand the things that I saw and heard. It just really hurt me, and I absolutely could not ever ignore a disfellowship person sitting in the back of the hall. I would always meet their eyes and smile, or just
we did too.
a heads up. Good, see, there you go.
Yeah, Desiree, she had balls. It was at the not the convention, the memorial. So there's a lot of people there, and there's a known disassociated friend of hers there, and she went up and gave her this big hug, and I'm just like, damn. I said hi to Wendy when I walked by. I didn't shun her or anything. I looked in her face, but I'm just like, that's ballsy. And then when people are not in the hall, that's where I have no problem having a full conversation. The audience knows that about this guy that I worked with. But I don't know. Her and I, we were on the same page, and we couldn't do it. We weren't good at that. Some people are really good at it.
Yeah, the cold, mean ones, the self-righteous, arrogant ones.
I guess, you know what, Marianne? I keep calling you. Yeah, I keep calling you Marianne. I'm sorry, it's a medication.
Okay.
Anne-Marie, it's that we there's some kind of pleasure that you get from helping people, even if you're in a dark place and not in the greatest place. There's something that feels good to cheer someone up or just help give some information on the news or whatever. And it's nice to have this community of people that care about one another. And I think it's enough to keep a person going. I keep mixing up words, but it's enough to keep a person going and to do the right thing. I don't believe in religion that much anymore, other than that Christ is King and that we just emulate him the best we can.
Absolutely. I love you.
I love you. I don't mean to talk too much, so the medications make it chatty. So I'm just warning you. I don't want to steal your show.
Oh, Stephen, this show is for you.
Eric.
You talk as much as you want. I'm sorry.
It's okay. You can get my name wrong too, because I've been getting your name wrong.
I know who you are. You're talking to a mother who had name tags on her own children.
I know, right? You must get.
I know.
They did it with just 2 kids, my parents.
I love the old adage: if you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours. There are so many opportunities, I believe, that the Lord gives you to show kindness to others. There's always someone that could use a smile or a compliment, as long as you're sincere. And I have been presented with so many opportunities to help people. And I've always thanked God so much for giving me the opportunity to help someone, if it's to fill up their car with gas or give them money or food certificates or buy them food to take out to their friends who are homeless or living in the woods. I do whatever I can do. And I always consider it a blessing that the Lord put me in the position to be able to help. I think that's a good thing. And in the back of my mind, I'm getting one arrogant elder say you should never give anything to homeless people. They're homeless because they want to be. You don't know their situation. What a snitty thing to say. Anything you want to add, Eric?
I was just going to say, there are certain phrases that I hate, and that's one of them. And another one has come back to Jehovah. I know it's a different subject, but yeah, homeless people don't want to be homeless. They're not. There's a few that have lost their mind and just like there was a cop I think one time that lost all his family at once in some kind of either murder or accident, and he kind of lost his mind and became homeless. Did he choose homelessness? Yes, in a way, but another way he didn't choose this. Well, there's things I don't want to say time and unforeseen occurrences. Sick and JW thing, but things happen. Shit happens. Sorry to swear, but horrible things can happen in our lives, and the man was just a victim of consequences, and he could. That's how he handled it. You know, some people don't handle it that way. I think he eventually was a story that I heard. He eventually got pulled out of it, and someone helped him and got his life straight.
All right. Well, it's just before I say goodbye, is there a particular Watchtower experience or maybe you or Desiree experience that you would like to share? I know you're in the hospital. I don't want to carry you out.
No, I don't. I also don't want to take over your show too. But if there's anyone else that wants to speak.
This isn't my show, Eric. This is your show. It's everyone else.
It's your show. We'll argue about that. I can give maybe a quick one if I can think of one on the top of my head. But I guess there's a lot of little ones. I've told so many of them, and I don't know which ones I've told. Let me think of a good one. Maybe this is a simple one. That way, it's not too long. We were out in service at Newport Creamery in Rhode Island, and it was my wife and I and two sisters. One of the sisters I didn't really care for. The other was my mom's friend, and I put up with her, but she was a pain in the butt, kind of just very snooty and ditzy, and has a rich vibe to her. I don't know. Anyways, we went to the restaurant for break, and the service was absolutely horrible. I mean, just bad. But it was the girl's first day, and man, she was messing everything up, and I didn't care. And I'm just like, whatever. And the women, the sisters, they were persecuting this poor girl, making fun of her, and then when the check came, it was blank. It was zero balance. They wiped it away, and for tips, she put learn to do better service, and all I had was my debit card with me, and there was no way for me to give her a tip without buying something, and I'm like, what do I do? And we left without tipping her, and I looked at my wife and I was mortified. And when we left the service group, I told her, I said, and we both said at the same time, we should go back and tip her. I'm like, I already am going to the bank, and I took out. This was 2003, maybe 2004, somewhere around there. So money was different back then. So I gave her $10, and that was a lot of money for, I don't know, maybe it wasn't a lot of money, but it was some. I was letting her know that I had noticed I was not a part of that. And she said, she gave me a big hug, and she said, "You guys are so sweet, you and your wife, and you're welcome back anytime, but not those other two Jehovah's Witnesses," because everyone knew who we were. And they let a bad witness, they're so obsessed with it. And I guess I'm just telling the story because it's simple and short, and it's Des and I just didn't fit in. You know what I mean? We weren't nasty like that to people. Where's everyone's manners? Would you talk to someone like that if they were a Jehovah's Witness? It's where? And that's not all Jehovah's Witnesses, but the other one was the sister was an elder's wife, so she should have known better. But yeah, that's my short story, and how Watchtower just they're bad associations that spoil useful habits. Some of these people could be a lot better than who they are.
So well told, and I'm really glad you brought that short story up. How are you feeling now that you're in the hospital? I'm just a little concerned for you.
I'm finally making progress, and I don't need pain meds anymore. So I'm probably going to go home tomorrow. It's just getting the swelling down.
Oh,
I've been, just so you know, I've been up and around, and when I can, and I clean my mess, so I'm doing okay.
Oh, God,
I'm stuck in bed.
Oh, that's not.
Well, thank you for having me on, Anne Marie. I won't twist your guys' ears anymore. But I love you all, and I'll see you next week.
Hey, Eric, speedy recovery. Speedy recovery. Speedy recovery.
Oh, thanks, brother. Was that Stefan?
Probably. That's Steve.
Thank you.
That's Stefan.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say before you leave, shake and bake, and
Shake and bake time, baby.
my life my life gets better and better all the time after leaving Watchtower because I run into people like you. You're just one of many, and I'm telling you, man. You know, just like the Bible says, iron sharpens iron. You're that kind of guy. You really are, and no, man. I appreciate it more than you can imagine. You know, sometimes you're doing your show and you may think nobody cares. No. You really, my brother Jesse and I, we always talk about you, good things. But it's always
bad sometimes too. It's all right.
But when we talk about you,
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
no, but we're always laughing because you bring joy.
That's cool.
That's the whole thing. You do bring you bring
You do
joy.
too, guys. I love you, brothers. Both of you.
Yeah.
You're great guys.
So I just wanted to call in Anne Marie's show and let her know that this guy he's a stand-up guy. He's a positive guy, and when you leave Watchtower, you want to be like that, a happy fella. And I appreciate you a lot.
You know what we should say to any Jehovah's Witnesses listening? This is what real love looks like, not your kingdom hall.
Yeah.
This is real love.
Yeah. And shake and bake time, babies. All right, let you go.
See it.
Hey, Gilbert, thank you for calling in. Thank you so much for your kind words for our brother Eric. He can't even call his parents to tell them they're in the hospital. They don't call him. They don't check on him. That's so wrong. But he has us, doesn't he, Gilbert? You still there, my love?
Are you waiting for the next caller? Is that what you're waiting for?
No, we're fine. Go ahead, Dallas.
I want to say that about that blood issue. That liaison committee, best thing they could have told them, they should make their own choices and tell the committee to just get the hell out of there.
Yep, they're the Gestapo enforcers.
The Taliban enforcer right there, more like it.
Yeah, good point, Dallas. Thank you. Anybody else like to chime in?
I really enjoyed the point that Eric made. He became a real Christian after he left Jehovah's Witnesses. I have to agree with him 1,000%. Not that he needs me to agree with him, because it was the same thing for me. I learned Christianity from somebody who's one of my closest friends. He is a Lutheran minister. I made that comment at the Kingdom Hall once, and of course everybody looked at me like I was insane, but it's the truth. He was the only person I've ever seen that showed true love, and didn't matter what religion you were, race, color, age. You needed help, he was going to help you. He wasn't shackled the way Watchtower is with all these rules and regulations, and you just wonder why people can't see that they are just like this organization. It's just like the scribes and the Sadducees. Jesus only had negative words against one group of people, and it was the scribes and the Pharisees. It was not the sinners. It was not the rich or the poor. It was the scribes, the Pharisees, Sadducees, Pharisees, the scribes. And it was because of their teaching. It was because of how they shackled. And this organization does the exact, nothing more than 22nd century or 21st century scribes and Pharisees. And you will never learn true love from this organization. When I left, the first thing I realized is that everybody was my brother and my sister. My brother and my sister was not somebody that sat in the Kingdom Hall with me. My brother, if you were alive, you had a heartbeat, you were my brother and my sister if I was in a position to do something for you. And I never did that my entire life. And so, just like Eric said, I didn't learn that true Christianity, even though I'm not a Christian. But I didn't learn true Christianity or just true love of neighbor. And everybody is your neighbor until I left the organization.
Right. Is this Stefan?
This is.
I just wanted to be double sure. I love your comment. I'm so happy you guys are calling in and sharing your thoughts. it's so important that we all get to share our thoughts. Is there anything you would like to add to that, Stefan?
No, that's it. You recovered air. That was it.
Okay. Is anybody wanting to call in to share a Watchtower story or experience? Feel free. If not, I'm going to ask if our brother Rick could share some of his stories. He didn't get a chance to speak at our last show. Anybody want to share a story before I ask our brother Rick? Brother Rick, are you there?
I'm right here, Anne-Marie. I'm right here. And yeah, I've got a few stories. I got a couple. I'll be very quick. We're going to get to the news here very shortly. But to just bring it up to speed, we had Jane Doe call in earlier. And she was talking about blood and the problems that has caused, as well as Pixie calling in as well. But, you know, in fact, I had a young friend. He was younger than me at the time. I was probably 28. He was like 20. And I remember going to his wedding. He was a Jehovah's Witness. He just married a pretty girl. And he was a handsome young man, a really good-looking kid. And so I went to his wedding. And about less than a year after the wedding, he developed leukemia. And I knew his father really well. The father was the presiding overseer in my congregation. The father was the presiding overseer in the congregation. And the boy's name was Brad. The man's name was Brad. And about less than a year after he got married, he died because he got leukemia and didn't take a blood transfusion. And then come to find out, from what I can remember, the Watchtower, of course, started changing their view on blood with blood fractions, saying you could take certain fractions. And consequently, the father, who I knew really well, in fact, he was my best man at my wedding, he mentioned to me, at least in the conversation with him, that his son perhaps could have lived taking some of these fractions. At the time, they didn't really get into that. But how many people have really died when they could have lived by Watchtower changing their doctrine? And then I also had another friend, a woman. She was a sister, and her name was Jenny. And she needed a liver transplant. This was back in the late 60s. And so Jenny needed the liver transplant, but wouldn't take it because the Watchtower called it cannibalism. So Jenny died. And then they redacted their information on cannibalism. They later came out, like 15 years later, saying that you could take a transplant if you needed it. It wouldn't be considered cannibalism. But there's two people I know personally knew these two people that died because of the teachings of the Watchtower. And then when the teachings have changed, these people could have been living today, Anne-Marie.
And you ever notice how when they make their proclamation of you can't do this or you can't do that because it's so terrible, a sin against Jehovah? I remember when they did change the cannibalism stance that they kept on, you can't have a a liver transplant or a heart transplant because it's cannibalism. When they changed it, they do this. They do it very quietly. I remember reading it in the back of a Watchtower in the middle of the Kingdom Hall, questions from readers. And they were talking about, well, you know, some might, according to their conscience, feel that it's okay. And that's all they said. And if you didn't catch that, you'd still be believing that you can't have a liver transplant. It's ridiculous. How awful. They never get up there and say, we were wrong. We realize now that having a liver transplant or a heart transplant or a kidney transplant is not cannibalism. We change our view on this. They never said it publicly. They just said it very quietly in the bottom of one little page of a Watchtower, and that's all I ever remember seeing.
And the reason why they do that is because they are cowards, Anne-Marie. Cowards.
Well,
Cowards of order.
actions speak louder than words.
Yep.
And I've seen it. I've heard it on the radio, local radio. I'm a radio aficionado. I've listened to the radio since 1965. I had my first transistor radio. The stuff I hear, I used to discount it, but Jehovah's Witnesses have such a reputation that is scary to people. Now, I heard this on the radio, and it was repeated again. They actually brought it up on 700 WLW, the nation station. It was the largest water station during World War II in the 1950s. Voice of America was nearby. A witness called in, and he said they were discussing organ transplant. He says, well, the blood, the guy, Mike McConnell, said, well, you got blood in that organ. You're going to be transferring blood. You don't believe in that. He said, well, the blood's all going to be rinsed out by formaldehyde. It's all soaked in formaldehyde. Transplanted from there. And the guy trying to tell him formaldehyde makes it poisonous. Disgusting. But that is the fact that some witness called and said that. It was the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And they actually replayed that on WLW like 5 or 6 years ago. That witnesses said it. Let me tell you, the witnesses have a reputation. If you go into the witnesses, your reputation's shot because of them. It has nothing to do with you. You have to bear the burden of every darn stupid thing these people believe and do. And that was my comment. Beware. You will suffer for other people's sins. And guess what? I'm not into that anymore. I'm almost 70 years old. Let me alone, for God's sake. Jesus suffered my sins. Continue on, Jesus. Continue on.
Absolutely. Are we listening?
Thank you, Mary Ann. As usual, don't get too giggly on me now. Come on. Act like a woman.
You're such a goof. I love you. You are amazing.
What?
I love your
You love
comment.
me? God, what am I supposed
Yes,
to tell
I love you.
Hey, stop it. Calm down.
Get over it. Get over it. Deal with it. Oh, thank you so much, King of the Thoughts, for chiming in. Rick, do you have any more comments? I don't want to cut you off because I know you have your story.
Well, I'll tell one more story. Then we'll go to the news, Anne-Marie. But anyways, it had to do when I was living down in Florida. And I've told this before, but I want to emphasize it again. I want people to hear this. Now, my son, he was a young man, and he was 17 at the time. And so there was a young pioneer sister. She was 16 at the time. And she was a pretty little Irish girl. Her name was Cheryl. She had red hair, and she was really a cute little kid. And consequently, my son at 17 started getting attracted to her. I mean, this is what happens in real life, Anne-Marie. It can't happen in the witnesses, but it happens in real life. So anyways, I didn't realize it, but she was a pioneer. My son wasn't. He was going to school. And what happened is, she was pioneering. And what happened to her is my son would meet with her during the day. And supposedly he was going to school, and he wasn't. He was cheating on us. So he was meeting with Cheryl. And, all of a sudden, everything hit the fan here. The father found out, and he came to me at the Kingdom Hall. He says, Rick, he says, your son is meeting with my daughter. He's skipping school, and he's meeting with my daughter, Cheryl. And, this is not good. The Jehovah's Witnesses don't do this. That is dating. And I said, he says, he told me he was going to the elders with this. I said, don't go to the elders. I said, they're going to blow this thing way out of proportion. They're going to make a big deal out of it. Just let it go. We can resolve this. So he says, well, it's not really right. The elders should know about it. I said, look, you and I know about it. It's pretty normal for a young man, 17, to get attracted to a girl. I mean, that's the way life is. So he says, well, we're going to have to talk to the elders. I says, it's a big mistake. If you go, the elders are going to make too big of a deal. So anyways, to make a long story short, he went to the elders. And so they wanted to meet with me and him in the back room of the Kingdom Hall. So I went back with them. And so the brother brought it up. So what is the big issue here? So, anyways, Jack was spending a lot of, that's my son's name. He was spending a lot of time on the phone with Cheryl. And so, Cheryl's father brought this up. He said that, Cheryl spends a lot of time talking on the phone to Jack. So I said, well, what would you call that? Phonication? I mean, it's not unusual that a young man would talk to a young woman. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses are not. That's the way the life goes. But no. In fact, in the elders meeting, they said that Rick, your son basically is dating. He is dating Cheryl when he's meeting with her, and they have to have marriage in mind. Now, how goofy is that? I mean, if you're going to date someone, do you have to have marriage in mind? That's why there's so many messed up Jehovah's Witness marriages. So the meeting went on, and they kept bringing up that, this is a date, and Cheryl and Jack have got to cut it loose. Now, my son really was attracted to Cheryl, and she was attracted to him, seriously. They would have been a nice couple. So anyways, the elder said that, I asked the elder, I said, look, what if we bring Cheryl over to my house? We can bring Cheryl's father and mother over too, and we can all sit down and watch a movie together, and we can have, popcorn and some soda, and we can all have a good time, and Jack and Cheryl can be supervised and chaperoned. Oh, no, the elder said. No, that's a date. That would be a date. If she came over your house, even with her parents, that's a date. I says, that doesn't, come on, for goodness sake, this is normal behavior for a young person. Nope, that's a date. So anyways, they stepped in, they broke the whole thing up, and she was such a nice girl. She would have been a really good girl for my son. And at that point, they broke up. They didn't see each other anymore. And how many good marriages could there have been without the Watchtower poking their nose into business of couples who want to, show affection and get to know each other? Now, my son went on and he married another woman. He fell in, well, I don't know if he fell in love with her really, but anyways, he got attracted to another woman who turned out to be a witch. And I mean, it really sent my son down the wrong path, really. So they got divorced, and what a mess up it has been. He's recovered now. He's doing fine. But I'm just thinking, Watchtower has ruined so many potential good marriages by stepping in and giving their 2 cents worth. I've seen this happen, not just with my own son, but even with my own sister, I've seen this happen, where Watchtower has to poke their nose in, and they will decide who is a good couple together. Anne-Marie, it's disgusting.
It truly is. And what a wonderful way that you showed humility, willing to work with the elders, even though they were totally off the hook, out of line. You are a grown man, well in the Watchtower, good standing. You came up with a perfect solution, and they just have to put their ugly smear on it and ruin any type of happiness. That was a great solution you came up with, and they shot it down, and they had no real reason, much less a scriptural reason.
Unreal. I mean, but that's what the Watchtower has done. How many really, in fact, I wanted to bring that up again. How many potentially good marriages did the Watchtower divert? How many did they ruin? The people never got married. I know many cases where this happens. And, for some reason, I don't know why the Watchtower, they have to control you from the cradle to the grave. I have no idea why they have to get involved. As a matter of fact, even in my own family, I had a sister that fell in love with a young man. He was a witness. And for some reason, the district overseer, the circuit overseer, the elders, they were encouraging my sister not to marry this man. And geez, I liked this guy. He's a really nice guy, and he's still a nice guy. And in fact, they tried to ruin the marriage. And I mean, it was just unbelievable. I can remember I was just young myself at the time, probably only around 20, 21. But I can remember that they were getting involved. And I'm saying, why would a religion do this? It's not sensible, Anne Marie, you know?
Absolutely. It really is nonsensical. And like they say, how do you make sense out of nonsense? I think that they are so unhappy and they're so narcissistic with their need to be Mr. In Control that they don't care what trauma or the unhappiness that they end up causing. It's all about, you listen to me, I'm an elder. It's so wrong. And I hated hearing your story because it just made me sick.
It doesn't make sense when you think about it from a religious standpoint. But remember, Watchtower is not a religion. Watchtower is a cult.
It's
So from a cult
definitely
perspective, it makes perfect sense.
Who's this speaking, please?
This is Stephen. I'm on fire tonight.
Oh, it is Stephen. I always want to make sure. I don't want to get anybody's names wrong. This is why I really felt it was. Go ahead, dear.
I just wanted to say something really quick. Mr. Farron just brought up something. After I quit attending meetings, I went to a non-witness funeral of a workmate, a colleague, and I went to the a non-witness wedding of a colleague, and then I went to a non-witness funeral. And I tell you, Anne-Marie, I'm 57, so I probably quit going to meetings about 7 or 8 years ago. This was the first time I ever saw a wedding that I thought was a real wedding, because all the weddings I've gone to just Watchtower. This wedding was fun. It was uplifting. They used the Bible all throughout. It was a shock, of course, to an ex-witness, because we think we're the only people on earth that actually use the Bible and subscribe to the Bible. They used the Bible all throughout. They made it lively. It was fun. The person who gave the sermon talked about how he had sat down with both the groom and the wife, now groom, now wife, months before they set the date. So he told them, if I don't feel like you guys are compatible and you're going to be happy for the rest of your life, I can't marry you. I can't be part of it. They had to study the Bible with them, sometimes together, sometimes separately. He had conversations with them. He had known the wife to be since she was a little girl, so he already knew her and her parents and her siblings. But he took time to get to know this male. And this man had everybody, including myself, in tears at this wedding, talking about love, talking about there's going to be challenges. We are all here to help you. When you have a problem, the sisters are going to come and help you. When we need to get this brother and get a 2x4 and beat his behind, we will. He just had us all in tears and laughing at the same time. And I thought to myself, this is what a wedding should be, the god-awful weddings that I've sat through in Watchtower. And this is from a church. And then the funeral that I attended was the first real funeral that I attended, where they actually talked about the person that had passed in their life and the fun things that they did, the not so fun things that they did. Anybody that had something to say could come up and talk for a couple of minutes. There's a lot of people, so they kind of got. And I thought to myself, this is how. And you compare that to the Watchtower funeral, which basically is 2 minutes of talking about the deceased, and then all the rest is a lecture about how you need to become, a witness. And I just thought to myself when Mr. Farron was talking about it, there's so many people that have gotten married to the wrong person, because in their mind it was all about marrying a fellow witness. And then just as he said, I'm sure there's many people that have crossed their paths that would have been great marriage mates, but they wouldn't even entertain the idea simply because that person was a witness. So what he said was spot on.
Wow. Absolutely. Thank you, Stephen, so much for chiming in with that last thought. Brother Rick, do we need to close the show now?
Yeah, I'd say we could probably close it now, Anne Marie. That'll be good. And we can go to the news so you can give your closing comments.
Well, thank you, my brother Rick. I am hoping that we can continue the same theme, Watchtower stories that need to be told. I have several, and I'm assuming that many have several as well, at least 2 or 3. So I'm hoping during the next 2 weeks, other callers will write down their stories that they want to share, if that's okay with you, my brother Rick. I want to thank everyone who called in. This is always so encouraging to hear all the callers. I want to thank Susan for chiming in. Bless her heart. She is truly a special, sweet lady. We want to thank our brother Ken, and we want to thank Pixie and Jane Doe and Tim from Australia. We want to thank Stephen and Eric and Gilbert and Dallas and Rick. Thank God he got to tell some of his stories. And we want to thank King of the Dots. He's always a hoot. I love listening to him. Thank you all for coming in today. Again, today is November 2nd, 2024. And this is the show Touched by the Tentacles of the Watchtower. Remember to have Rick provide this forum, this platform for us to call in live, to listen to each other, validate one another, and to support one another. We all are so very, very blessed to have Rick. We need to go to Rick and JW World News.
Well, thank you very much, Anne Marie. Very good program. Lots of people calling in. Boy, I'm looking at numbers really going up here tonight. As I said earlier at the outset of the program, we have a lot of people come in as the colder weather sets in. And of course, the clock goes back tonight. Fall back, as they say. Now you're going to lose an hour's sleep. So you want to be prepared for that. So a lot of people didn't go out tonight, but they're listening in to the Six Screens conference call. Well, we are going to JW World News. Man, I cannot believe the things I'm reading online. Now, I've been doing this program for 20 years, but you know, the economy is tanking for so many people. We're going to talk about that tonight. A lot of Jehovah's Witnesses are going homeless. What's happening with the homeless Jehovah's Witnesses? And another thing, there's been all kinds of articles in AARP magazine. The New York Times this week had an article all about scams. Scams taking place, not only in, from the Prince of Nigeria, and not only romantic scams, but religious scams. Oh, yes, religious scams. And who is scamming people the most? Well, Jehovah's Witnesses. They might not be the most, but they're getting away with it. They're scamming a lot of money. We're going to be talking about that on the news. So don't go anywhere. Then we get Dick and Constance. They're exposing the Watchtower. They'll be coming on around 9:30 tonight. And then after that program, we have a tale of two witnesses. We have Jesse Gonzalez along with his brother Gilbert. They'll be coming in. They burn the midnight oil right here on the Six Screens Telenetwork. So don't go anywhere. Stay with us. We got a lot to talk about tonight. I think you'll find it rather fascinating. So if this is your first time in, really, if you can muster up the courage and call in, that would be wonderful. But we understand sometimes there's extenuating circumstance where people can't do that. So let's end the program here. Anne-Marie, you did a great job. And Touched by the Tentacles of the Watchtower. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We're going to end it right here. All right. So we're ending this program.